What's up, cool people? Welcome to another Study Stream Saturday. Okay, real quick, I'm gonna make sure the audio is working on the streams before I get too far with this. Yep, that's all good. Okay. Hopefully it'll stop dropping frames now. But yeah, more Bible study, and since I don't feel like I'm so stuck on Earth Defense Force, I'm gonna be picking up with some more Digimon Survive once the Bible study portion is done. So, yeah. I guess I don't know if there's really too much else to say. I've been busy, what with Shorts Timber going on, and then working and church stuff, especially small groups picking back up, and now leading one of those. So there's like occasional leader training things. So, yeah. Anyway, I will say that the main downside of doing all this, especially the Shorts Timber stuff, has cut into a few things and or distracted me a little bit from really focusing on trying to find moments in my regular videos to make shorts out of them, because yeah, it just hasn't really been happening. Like, half the time while I've been editing a regular video of mine for YouTube, I've also simultaneously been sharing a short video on various platforms, particularly TikTok, Instagram, and by proxy Facebook, and then of course YouTube, because like that's where they're called shorts. That's where the whole Shorts Timber moniker is coming from. But anyway, yeah. So with the multitasking going on in that way, I definitely have not so much been doing very great with focusing on or paying attention to, I should say, the videos that I'm editing, and like moments from those that I could turn into shorts later. I will try a bit harder on that once Shorts Timber is done. But that means pretty much October is where that's gonna get a little off. Because before doing the whole Shorts Timber thing, I was fairly decent at being able to find, like at least a short video and another kind of video, or even just two short videos to fill in for Saturday and Sunday that weren't just like complete randomness, that were actual like clips taken from other videos. Yeah, hopefully I'll be able to get back to that a little bit better after the month is over. There's only like one more week of it to go, so of course you all won't really see the ripple effects on my YouTube channel until next month, and then see it kind of reset the month after. But anyway, I digress. Okay, thought I'd mention some thoughts I had before I dig into any of the Bible study stuff, partially to give people a chance to come on in to the stream and actually get here before doing any of the Bible study. Anyway, so speaking of the Bible study stuff, I am going to move things around a little bit. Mostly moving around chat windows so I can have those visible on one screen while I then have Bible study stuff going on the other screen. How many viewers do the Bible studies get? Depends maybe if you're talking about live or later on. Because when I, like, turn them into, like, kind of separate per chapter videos for YouTube later on, I want to say those are probably averaging, like, I'm going to say 7, because it's usually between, like, 5 to 10 views on YouTube. The actual live streams that they come from, I mean, it's a little hard to tell which views are coming purely during the Bible study portion and which ones are coming in later. It tends to be the lesser viewed portion of those live streams whenever I do them, I will admit. But the whole idea of doing the other stuff is to hopefully bring some people in for the Bible study times here and there, just, to give them at least a chance of hearing something and or engaging, asking questions that come to mind. So, especially with, the fact that I'm nowhere near a big channel or anything like that on Kick or YouTube, I don't necessarily expect a ton of people joining in. I would like that to eventually be the case, but it is what it is. I'm fine with it as it is. I'm just, there is a reason behind me doing what I'm doing and how I'm doing it. Anyway. Anyway. Hi, Robot, by the way. Nice of you to join in once again. So, since I don't know if you've actually seen any of the Bible study portions of my live streams, I'll just put this out there right now. Even similar to the gaming stuff, like, I do record these, the Bible study portions especially, I record those for later usage, but don't let that keep you from, like, putting questions or thoughts or whatever in the chat. Just know that I might take a couple minutes before responding to them because, if I'm, like, mid-paragraph or whatever within the verses, or if I'm, like, in the middle of a thought that I really kind of want to delve further into and explain a bit more of, I want to make sure that I get to that decently well before then directly responding to any chat comments or questions. So, anyway, and I'll explain some context of what's going on once I really get started, but I also like to include that portion in the eventual videos, so I'll wait until I'm actually recording for that, which I could pretty much start working on, like, now-ish. So, yeah, I don't have any other thoughts before we get rolling. I guess we'll get started with the Bible study. Okay. So we're looking at Deuteronomy chapter 29 right now, and I'll get to that early footnote once I read that verse, but for context, so, the Israelites who were slaves in Egypt, but then left, after the plagues and whatnot. Then they got to Mount Sinai, were given the 10 Commandments, and, like, the original covenant, went toward the promised land, got to the edge of it, scouted it out, were too scared to go in, so then because they were too scared and didn't trust God, God sent them wandering the wilderness for 40 years-ish, until the old generation who wouldn't go in just about all died out, except for 2 people. Well, 3 if you count Moses here. And then they've kind of made their way back at this point, and Moses, all throughout Deuteronomy, has been giving them, a refresher on where they've come from, and then some further commandments on what they're supposed to do when they get in there, how they're supposed to live as, like a nation once they settle, and different things like that. Which is definitely an important thing to consider when looking at the first verse of this chapter, which I'll start reading right now. So, Deuteronomy, chapter 29. These are the terms of the covenant the Lord commanded Moses to make with the Israelites while they were in the land of Moab, in addition to the covenant he had made with them at Mount Sinai. Now, it says in addition there, like, this is not meant to replace the old covenant from Mount Sinai. This is just like, also do this. Now, there's actually footnotes at each end of this verse, interestingly enough. The first one says that the first verse here is originally at the end of the previous chapter in the Hebrew text, which chapter 28 was wrapping up. They were talking about basically, blessings and curses for following the covenant or not. And they, there were also specific commands laid out within that. Actually, let me go back to chapter 27 real quick, because I'm thinking these verses in here, chapter 27 verses like 15 through the end of that chapter, were very specifically the new covenant being mentioned. At least if you look at, the way the original Hebrew text has this verse placed. However, if you place it at the beginning of this chapter, then it makes it seem like the following portion is the new additional covenant being made with the younger generation of Israelites here. I'm not going to say I know for sure which is the proper way to look at this, because honestly, this next section just talks about reviewing the covenant, so there's probably going to be some overlap anyway. The stuff from chapter 27, though, seems more like a simplified, easy to remember, more covenant style set of statements, because it's easier to remember, closer to like how the 10 Commandments were with the original covenant. But that's just my thinking on that. And then footnote B here. Oh, Hebrew says Mount Horeb instead of Sinai, but they're both meaning the same place. So it's not really a big deal. Other than there's probably a certain significance to the Hebrew name Horeb and like a certain translation of that and what that means that I personally am not aware of because I don't know Hebrew. I could try and look it up at some point, though. Really, I should, but perhaps another time. Because I've already talked long enough just getting through this single verse. Sorry, real quick, I gotta pause to look at a text message or two. Okay. I'm like, I saw that it was from my dad, so I wanted to make sure it wasn't anything really important. Nah. Okay. Quick sip of water. Or perhaps swig would be the more accurate term. Anyway. Okay. Now we'll move along. And there's a footnote right here. It probably just mentions the numbering being different in the original Hebrew text. But following up on that for the rest of the chapter. Okay, so verse 2 and some of the following. Moses summoned all the Israelites and said to them, "You have seen with your own eyes everything the Lord did in the land of Egypt to Pharaoh and to all his servants and to his whole country, all the great tests of strength, the miraculous signs, and the amazing wonders. But to this day the Lord has not given you minds that understand, nor eyes that see, nor ears that hear. For 40 years I led you through the wilderness, yet your clothes and sandals did not wear out. You ate no bread and drank no wine or other alcoholic drink, but he provided for you so you would know that he is the Lord your God." So, verse 4 there strikes me as particularly interesting in the midst of this. Saying that they still have not been given minds to understand, eyes to see, or ears to hear. Like, that almost kind of explains a bit why there's A, so many commands, B, why all of it just seems so, like, cut and dry, legalistic. And I guess, to some effect, see why this all has to be repeated over and over again. Because it's almost like God is looking at the nation of Israel similar to how you would children. Which to some slight effect is understandable because they're, like, as a people group and eventual nation, Israel is still kind of in its infancy relative to its relationship with God. I don't necessarily know if that was the intent here, but at the same time, Moses is pretty much, for lack of a better way to put it, sort of calling them out, saying like, all right, look, you know about all these things that happened before and how God was responsible for all of them, but you still drift away from the Lord. You still, like, don't fully follow him like you should. So, yeah, the rest of this was just kind of explaining things that have happened previously and how it was like, yeah, they went through all this stuff and God still provided for them along the way. Even though they, like, wandered for 40 years. Yeah, anyway. I found verse 4 in there particularly interesting. But I don't want to stick on it too long. So, then we get to verse 7. When we came here, King Sihon of Heshbon and King Og of Bashan came out to fight against us, but we defeated them. We took their land and gave it to the tribes of Reuben and Gad and to the half-tribe of Manasseh as their grant of land. Yeah, so these 2.5 tribes already kind of have their land established, assuming that, they continue going with the rest of the tribes to conquer and settle the remainder of the promised land on the other side of the Jordan River. But those tribes wanted the land on this side of the Jordan River, where they currently are, as Moses is saying this, just because it seemed like it would be a good land for them to raise their flocks and such. Um, so yeah, like they've already done a bit of the conquering of the promised land, so to speak, even though it's like just a tiny little portion just past the one of the primary boundaries that was laid out, that being the Jordan River, obviously. But anyway, so yeah, that stuff happened kind of just on the outskirts of the main part of the Promised Land. Verse 9. Therefore, obey the terms of this covenant, so that you will prosper in everything you do. All of you, tribal leaders, elders, officers, all the men of Israel, are standing today in the presence of the Lord your God. Your little ones and your wives are with you, as well as the foreigners living among you, who chop your wood and carry your water. You are standing here today to enter into the covenant of the Lord your God. The Lord is making this covenant, including the curses. By entering into the covenant today, he will establish you as his people and confirm that he is your God, just as he promised you, as he swore to your ancestors Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. See, right there it specifically mentions the curses being part of the covenant, which would definitely make more sense that, verse 1 here, talking about the terms of the covenant, like, it seems more likely that applies to, like, chapters 27 and 28. Because it kind of laid out, all right, here's some stuff that we're supposed to do. Here's blessings that'll happen if it's followed, curses that'll happen if it's not followed. And even though, as I recall, it was previously stated that, like, they were, like, this generation in particular was officially considered, God's chosen people now by way of this newer added covenant. They're still kind of going over, like, okay, yes, you're God's people now, but Moses is still kind of recapping everything. It's like, all right, one more time, just so y'all understand, here's what's going on. Okay. Then verse 14. But you are not the only ones with whom I am making this covenant with its curses. I am making this covenant both with you who stand here today in the presence of the Lord your God, and also with future generations who are not standing here today. You remember how we lived in the land of Egypt, and how we traveled through the lands of enemy nations as we left. You have seen their detestable practices and their idols made of wood, stone, silver, and gold. I am making this covenant with you so that no one among you, no man, woman, clan, or tribe, will turn away from the Lord our God to worship these gods of other nations, and so that no root among you bears bitter and poisonous fruit. So, the whole future generations thing is probably just to hammer in the point that, like, yeah, this isn't just for you all right now. This also applies to your descendants. So, like, make sure you're teaching them, telling them about these things, bringing them up in, the proper ways to conduct themselves as God's people. And then kind of a reminder of, like, hey, you saw all these people as we, left Egypt, and the things they did with their, false gods. Don't be like those people. I'm specifically reminding you of this. Do not turn away to these other gods. Uh, footnote there. So, I assume this applies to the word idols. Hebrew term literally is round things, and it probably alludes to dung. So, it's calling them idols, but it's essentially through use of the actual Hebrew term there, probably calling them like just worthless piles of crap. Because that's essentially what idols are in God's eyes. They're worthless. They do nothing. They're just things that sit there and look a certain way, however they happen to be made. But with, with the Lord God being, almighty and doing all these things for his people, creator of the world, and all that stuff included, like, that, it's nothing. These idols are even, like, less than ants to him. Anyway. Sometimes if you just read the words and not, like, footnotes explaining some of that stuff, you lose a little bit of the meaning, which even just knowing, I guess this stuff is probably the main reason why I would maybe at some point want to learn Hebrew to better understand these things and like the name meanings and why all that is significant. But anyway, I'll move along now to verse 19. Those who hear the warnings of this curse should not congratulate themselves, thinking, I am safe, even though I am following the desires of my own stubborn heart. This would lead to utter ruin. The Lord will never pardon such people. Instead, his anger and jealousy will burn against them. All the curses written in this book will come down on them, and the Lord will erase their names from under heaven. The Lord will separate them from all the tribes of Israel, to pour out on them all the curses of the covenant recorded in this book of instruction. Interesting how book of instructions capitalized there. But anyway, I think that's just making sure that it's obvious it's referring to, the covenant and or possibly the entirety of like the scroll or whatever that this would have been written on originally. But yeah, there are similar messages even all the way in the New Testament talking about saying, okay, yeah, you might be allowed, air quote, to do all things as you want because there's freedom through Jesus, but like there's still consequences for those actions. This is even a more strict version of that, basically saying like, all right, just because you're part of this covenant doesn't mean that you're safe. If you go and do whatever you want, disobeying the covenant, you're going to get all those curses that were mentioned in said covenant. So, yeah, bad idea. Even if it's only just like a singular tribe or whatever, God is capable of singling them out and giving just them the curses that were mentioned. Which, for just a general reference, the curses previously included, you know what, let me take a look at some of them. Curses previously included not being able to grow crops very well, children dying off, in fact, eventually things getting so bad that they will feel like they have to even eat their own children. That's like when it gets to the worst of the worst part. But like, they'll be taken as hostages. I don't want to say slaves. They might be slaves in some ways, but then like they'll work for stuff and like not really even be able to have what they work for themselves. They'll even get sent back to Egypt, and they'll want to work as servants there, but get refused because they're not even deemed worthy of that. A bunch of stuff like that is laid out in the curses from the previous chapter. I assume those are the curses it's referring to here. So yeah, lots of bad stuff coming for disobedience. But anyway, okay, on to verse 22. Then the generations to come, both your own descendants and the foreigners who come from distant lands, will see the devastation of the land and the diseases the Lord inflicts on it. They will exclaim, "The whole land is devastated by sulfur and salt. It is a wasteland with nothing planted and nothing growing, not even a blade of grass. It is like the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah, Admah and Zeboim, which the Lord destroyed in his intense anger." And all the surrounding nations will ask, "Why has the Lord done this to this land? Why was he so angry?" I'll pause there real quick. So, yeah, even, it says even the generations coming after them would, see the devastation, and based on the description here, you would assume it then serves as sort of a warning to those who see it once it gets explained. But that comes in the following verses that I haven't read yet. But yeah, really, really hammering in the point that, like, bad things are happening if you disobey the covenant. As to why the Lord would do that, we get to that in verse 25 here. And the answer will be, "This happened because the people of the land abandoned the covenant that the Lord, the God of their ancestors, made with them when he brought them out of the land of Egypt. Instead, they turned away to serve and worship gods they had not known before, gods that were not from the Lord. That is why the Lord's anger has burned against this land, bringing down on it every curse recorded in this book. In great anger and fury, the Lord uprooted his people from their land and banished them to another land where they still live today. The Lord our God has secrets known to no one. We are not accountable for them, but we and our children are accountable forever for all he has revealed to us, so that we may obey all the terms of these instructions." So, yeah, people ask why the land is like so totally destroyed and, God's people don't live there anymore. It's like, well, because they disobeyed the covenant here. And, there's all these curses that were mentioned in the covenant that like kind of explain what's happening here. Land being devastated, people being scattered, and a whole bunch more. And then it wraps it up by saying, there's things God knows that nobody else does. We don't need to worry about those, but what God has told us, we need to make sure that we obey. Because we've heard it ourselves. We have no excuse for not knowing any better. Like, you can't just claim ignorance as a reason for not obeying. Kind of like you can't claim ignorance for certain other laws. Even like if you're traveling, going from one place to another, ignorance of the law does not, exclude you from being held to the law of wherever you currently are. So, yeah. I guess that wraps up chapter 29. I I feel like I want to have more thoughts on this, but I kind of don't. Especially the way that ends, I feel like is a good sort of summary, one final reminder of like, yeah, let's make sure we're holding ourselves to this and not breaking the covenant. Okay. So yeah, I do for the live streams do at least 2 chapters of Bible study per stream because I only do one of these per week. But like with the way I have my YouTube video schedule laid out, I try and get through 2 chapters per week for those. Because, yeah, when I set out to go through the entirety of the Bible and make Bible study videos on all of it, I did a little number crunching and realized it would take really, really long. Even at the rate of 2 chapters a week, it would take like over 5 years to get through the entire Bible. If I had gone just 1 chapter a week, it's double that. In fact, I seem to remember it being closer to 11 years than 10. So, yeah. Once I realized that, I was like, yeah, let's maybe try and double up on the Bible study chapters per week. And that started before I even did any live streaming, really. Okay, this chapter's kind of on the short side of things. But I don't think I'll be going into a 3rd chapter because I've hit a decent spot where, like, backlog of gaming videos and Bible study videos are, like, even with each other. And I kind of don't want to disrupt that too much. So, unless there are any thoughts or questions or whatever, I will just get right on into chapter 30 then. I'll make sure there's nothing noteworthy on my phone for me to look at. Hold up. Do. Sorry, I'm responding to a comment on like an Instagram video that I posted. Honestly, this one was a while ago, but like so many people got into the comments and those interactions went back and forth so long. Uh, bu- 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 Unsurprisingly, you talk about a somewhat hot topic, and people want to be argumentative. I say hot topic, it's more so within the realm of, Christians that it's a hot topic. Less so outside of the Christian circle of influence. But yeah, I've literally had people trying to say that I'm not a believer just because I took a stance on a certain thing that they think is the only way to go. But I don't know if I want to get into that on stream right now. Back to the Bible study. Alright. So now we're looking at Deuteronomy chapter 30, which is after the covenant has been laid out kind of multiple times. Because there was, chapters 27 and 28 that, really kind of said, okay, here's the covenant, write it down. And then Moses goes back and reviews it. Debatably, even before that, with some of the commands that were laid out at much greater length. But, yeah. People about to head into the promised land kind of need to know how they're supposed to live, and behave as representatives of God. And, again, with this time frame that this is happening in, the repetition helps. Because they're probably not going to be reading it very much, if at all. So anyway, yeah. Suppose that's all I'll say regarding context. Here we go. Deuteronomy chapter 30. In the future, when you experience all these blessings and curses I have listed for you, and when you are living among the nations to which the Lord your God has exiled you, take to heart all these instructions. If at that time you and your children return to the Lord your God, and if you obey with all your heart and all your soul all the commands I have given you today, then the Lord your God will restore your fortunes. He will have mercy on you and gather you back from all the nations where he has scattered you. Even though you are banished to the ends of the earth, the Lord your God will gather you from there and bring you back again. The Lord your God will return you to the land that belonged to your ancestors, and you will possess that land again. Then he will make you even more prosperous and numerous than your ancestors. So, it's practically stated as a given here that, yeah, all these blessings and curses that were laid out, they're all gonna happen. So after all that, if you come back to this and follow God once more, he will return you to the land that has been promised to Abraham, Isaac, all your forefathers, and for the people at that time, when all this happens, the land that was deemed as belonging to their ancestors, which essentially is the people Moses is talking to right now. Footnote here. Hebrews says of the heavens, rather than being banished to the ends of the earth, which is interesting, because, that implies something quite different. It's not like they would have literally been living up in the clouds, but it almost makes me wonder if this is kind of referring to their souls and the state in which those will exist and where they will reside, but that maybe it's more so like a figurative state of their souls, because bringing them back again, bringing their souls back again would kind of imply that, like, their eternal residence, for lack of a better way to put it, would end up changing. And I don't think that's the case. I don't think that's a biblically consistent way of looking at any of this. That God, like, would take somebody from hell, essentially, and, like, because their descendants turned back to him, that, like, oh yeah, okay, these people turned back, so now their ancestors who were in hell, they get to come to heaven now. I don't think that's what it's saying. But I guess it could also be saying the heavens there in the original Hebrew, because that was deemed, like, even further away than the earth, because it's, like, up there in addition to out there. So it could have been almost like a slight use of a hyperbolic analogy. But that's just kind of my own speculation and thoughts on that specific wording there. Anyway. Okay, moving on to verse 6. The Lord your God will change your heart and the hearts of all your descendants, so that you will love him with all your heart and soul, and so you may live. The Lord your God will inflict all these curses on your enemies and on those who hate and persecute you. Then you will again obey the Lord and keep all his commands that I am giving you today. I think it's kind of implied. I mean, it could, the change of heart could be coming from God before they go back to the promised land post-exile. Or it could be saying that, you know, after they turn back to God, then he will kind of fill them again with the righteousness they're supposed to have. And, you know, they will then continue following his commands and, you know, loving him with heart and soul, as it says there in verse 6. Footnote there at heart. Hebrew says, will circumcise your heart. So, you know, circumcision being a mark of being God's people. I mean, it's still kind of the same idea, but more specifically, it's like, okay, it's, you know, God will bring you back into the fold, so to speak. Like, you won't be beholden to the curses anymore. You'll be deemed, you know, part of God's people, worthy of his affection and protection. But essentially, God would be, you know, would be changing their ways of living, their habits, their thinking towards that better way of living again. Verse 9. The Lord your God will then make you successful in everything you do. He will give you many children and numerous livestock, and he will cause your fields to produce abundant harvests. For the Lord will again delight in being good to you as he was to your ancestors. The Lord your God will delight in you if you obey his voice and keep the commands and decrees written in this book of instruction, and if you turn to the Lord your God with all your heart and soul. Kind of further emphasizing that, yes, they will be blessed once more when they turn back. So it's It's not just oh, you messed up and broke the covenant, there's no chance of you as a people being redeemed ever again. This is kind of reminding them that even when things go horribly wrong and it seems like it couldn't get any worse, there's still a chance at redemption if you come back to God. Okay. And then, of course, after that, God will, like, kind of undo all the bad, in a way. Or at least make things better once again for them. Alright. Different little subsection here. But anyway, verse 11. This command I am giving you today is not too difficult for you, and it is not beyond your reach. It is not kept in heaven, so distant that you must ask, who will go up to heaven and bring it down so we can hear it and obey? It is not kept beyond the sea, so far away that you must ask, who will cross the sea to bring it to us so we can hear it and obey? No, the message is very close at hand. It is on your lips and in your heart so that you can obey it. See, the whole heaven distance thing just kind of had me thinking, okay, maybe my thought about the distance being what it was alluding to, with them being banished to the ends of the heavens, as it says in verse 4 here, maybe that was the proper way to think of it. But anyway, I tend to lean towards like, hey, there are probably multiple accurate, reasonable ways of interpreting these things. Multiple ways that they could be useful for instruction. But anyway, so now Moses is kind of telling them, hey, look, this is doable. God isn't asking you to, do some crazy thing out there that, like, it's completely unobtainable. Which is all the more reason why, they should be expected to follow it. Okay, verse 15. Now listen, today I am giving you a choice between life and death, between prosperity and disaster. For I command you this day to love the Lord your God and to keep his commands, decrees, and regulations by walking in his ways. If you do this, you will live and multiply, and the Lord your God will bless you and the land you are about to enter and occupy. But if your heart turns away and you refuse to listen, and if you are drawn away to serve and worship other gods, then I warn you now that you will certainly be destroyed. You will not live a long, good life in the land you are crossing the Jordan to occupy. So, this sounds like a very, I don't know if inspirational is quite the best word, but this sentence right here is really kind of making it plain and simple and boiling all this down to its essence. Like, okay, look, if you follow this, things will go well. You're choosing life and prosperity. But if you disobey, you're choosing death and disaster. And it's really that simple if you boil it down to the heart of the matter. But it is still a choice. Like, they, just because they've been given all these commands doesn't mean they're completely incapable of, falling away from that covenant and turning from what God has set out for them. And again, it goes well if they obey, goes bad if they disobey. That it's kind of repetitious again, but like being worded in slightly different ways. Still very much driving home the point, though. Okay. Then, verse 19. Today I have given you the choice between life and death, between blessings and curses. Now I call on heaven and earth to witness the choice you make. Oh, that you would choose life, so that your descendants might live. You can make this choice by loving the Lord your God, obeying him, and committing yourself firmly to him. This is the key to your life. And if you love and obey the Lord, you will live long in the land the Lord swore to give your ancestors Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So, now he's specifically saying, all right, just so it's clear, choosing life means, loving the Lord your God, obeying him, and committing yourself to him. Like, that is how you choose life in this situation. Not through any other means. It's by obeying. Now, of course, the situation's a little bit different in this day and age regarding Christians and, being part of the promises of God. But back in this context, in the Old Testament, for the Israelites, it was all about sticking to the covenant. Footnote there. Oh. So it could be read as he is the key to your life rather than this. When you say this, it implies that, obedience is the key to your life. But if you say he instead, it's saying God is the key to your life, which then makes it all the more consistent, even with New Testament ideas. And see, this is why I'm super glad I look at these footnotes, because it can bring a whole different, even just one word change can bring a whole different perspective on it that might actually make it, more consistent with the entirety of the biblical narrative. So, as many people would be quick to point out, according to the New Testament, it is not through your own works that you are deemed righteous and that you are saved, but through faith in Jesus. So essentially, Jesus being part of the God Trinity theology, it's all confusing and stuff for most people, actually, really in general, for basically everybody. Nobody really fully understands the Trinity. But it, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, three kind of essences all in the same being, though. It's generally assumed when it talks about the Lord, I would say, in the Old Testament, it's referring more so to God the Father specifically, but really, it's all God anyway. So, back to the whole word change here, saying that he is the key to your life, it's really all about the commitment to God and pursuing God. Don't get so hyper-focused on the obedience and the commands that you lose sight of God in amongst all that. That's a problem that the Pharisees end up having in the New Testament, and why Jesus takes issue with them so often. But it's all about God, not the commands. The commands are just a sign of how God wants them to act. Anyway, I think I've said enough on that point. Repetition, driving it in. It's like I'm putting myself mentally in that context, even though I have knowledge of other things that happen far later. But anyway, I digress. So I guess that's going to do it for Deuteronomy chapter 30. And then that means I'm also done with the Bible study portion of today's live stream. There's only 4 chapters left in Deuteronomy, so 2 more weeks and then we'll be moving on to Joshua and actually ending what I would call the Moses saga. But anyway, so for the rest of this stream, it'll be getting into Digimon Survive, more Wrathful Path stuff, just for fun. But know that, like, that might be what I'm doing in that moment, but really it's all about having some time to, be open to discussion, to questions, whatever. They can be related to the game, sure, but, like, even if you want to talk about more faith-related stuff, more Bible questions, more whatever, like, I'm totally open to it. But before we officially get to that portion of things today, I'm going to need to shift my setup a little bit. Maybe take a quick bathroom break as well, if I'm honest. So, yeah. Give me a few minutes, and I shall return. But in the meantime, I will at least give you some music to listen to or something. I'm just trying to think of what song to do in the meantime. There's a number of them that I've kind of downloaded from the YouTube audio library or whatever it's technically called. And I use those because I'm pretty sure they're, free of any copyright worries. Anywho. Okay. So, like I said, be back in a bit. Okay, I'm back. Let me make sure I turn off my desktop audio just in case I get, I don't know, friggin' Discord notifications or something while I'm streaming here. Anyway, okay, Digimon Survive. Be continuing with the Wrathful Path playthrough, and yeah, it's been interesting. If Robot is still viewing this, then I'm sure there will be plenty more opportunities to joke around about things and totally disrupt the mood that's going on in the game, but hey, you know what? It's all fine by me. And I'm just now realizing how much of a delay that there is, at least relative to when I started the stream, with Kick in particular. It's weird, like sometimes the YouTube stream lags behind more, sometimes the Kick stream lags behind more. I don't understand why it's like that, and why it's inconsistent like that. But anywho, so, right. This is the one that I'm actually keeping now as a, like, pre-branching of the path. I don't know why I feel the need to have one save slot like that for every playthrough, but I do. It's like, okay, here's where that was, here's where I finished the game, here's the last save point before finishing the game. And then, like, decision point right before the end, and there's the end. It, like, just every time I've played through it. And I know this kind of indicates 4 playthroughs. One of them was specifically done in a way that would have reflected a brand new playthrough for the sake of YouTube. Anywho, I digress. Here we go. Yeah, right. Another, like, information moment thing here. Oh, but this is with Renamon and the Master talking. So, a bunch of this is definitely familiar from previous times that I've played through. At least it's familiar to me. I need to turn up the volume on my own TV here so I can hear it. But honestly, I might auto-scroll the dialogue here just because I've heard it all before. Also, I will remove my webcam. Also, letting this auto-scroll instead of just skipping it all gives me a chance to not use my throat for a bit.
我が大願を成就した暁にはこのよりしろ返してやろう。
約束だよ。
When I have it set on auto, it goes through the, like, thoughts of the characters in the parentheses there really quickly. That seems a reasonable conclusion. So, sorry, let me bring back my webcam. This seems a little bit different from previous storylines, previous, paths, so to speak, in the game, in that, before, it didn't seem like Agumon was doing so much of it, and there was definitely more of the workload taking care of the young ones, being performed by, like, Aoi and Saki and Mew. But because of Saki dying, that dynamic seems like maybe it has changed significantly. Anyway, yesterday we ran for our lives from the fog-covered amusement park. One of our dear friends disappeared before our eyes. We made it back to the school somehow, but everyone slept without saying a word. Why couldn't we save her? I'm sure that's all anyone could think about that night. Even so, morning always comes, no matter what awful things happened the day before.
Agumon, ohayo. Agumon? どうしたんだ? Agumon, 一体何が?
いい子ですね。今ご飯あげまちから。ほら、泣かない。
So now it seems almost like the Digimon are having more of a hand in this. Or even like, or maybe it's just emphasizing their hand in taking care of the young ones.
こら泣くな。シャコモンが泣き止ませてるのに泣くんじゃない。
あ、こいつ漏らしているぞ。誰か拭くものを。
これどうなってんだ?
遊園地の子たちだよ。僕ら
Yeah.
面倒見なき
And
ゃ
I
いけない
guarantee you, Aoi's in no mood to be taking care of them.
ああ、そりゃそうか。
I hadn't thought about it. My head's been swimming with thoughts of Saki. All the critters we brought from the park are still just babies. Times like this, Aoi and Saki would spearhead this kind of work. Mew would play with them, and Kaito would help out better than anyone expected. Me and Minoru would join the fray, maybe with some hesitation. But now...
そういえば葵さんやみんなは
みんな起きてきてるよ。
They're all zoned out in the corner of the room. It's weird. Agumon and the others are all so frantic. Normally that'd be pretty funny. But for us humans, it's a different story.
みんな
Just silence. Everyone's so down. Why do we have to lose another one of us? Why Saki? Are Agumon and the others stronger than us somehow? At least they live in the present.
さきさん、
葵さん
葵、誰が話しかけても全然反応しないんだ。ラブラムもすごく心配してるよ。
Aoi's practically a shell of her former self. Not that I blame her. She was as close to Saki as any of us, maybe more.
人間の子供たちよ。こんなことになってしまってすまなかったの。
I don't remember Digimon coming with us other times either. Definitely not the first time I played through, but anyway.
ジジモン
But that was when I chose the moral path.
助けてくれたことは感謝してもしきれない。おかげで多くの仲間たちの命が救われた。だがその代わりにお主の仲間を失わせてしまった。本当に申し訳ない。
そんなジジモンのせいじゃないよ。
そうだよ。誰が悪いっつうなら襲ってきた奴らのせいだろ。
いや、わしはお前さんたちの勇気と好意に甘えすぎたのじゃ。せめてあの時わしがこの身を張ってでもあの子を助けることができたなら、犠牲になるべきはわしのような老いぼれだったのじゃ。
I wonder if, you know, that feeling is connected to why he ends up dying on the moral story path.
うちはジジモンやみんなが無事で嬉しいよ。生きててくれてよかったって思ってる。うちはもう誰にも死んでほしくない。ミュ
僕もそう思うよ。もちろん先のことはすごく悲しいし悔しい。
Also, this dialogue is not familiar, which is why I'm not, like, auto-playing through it.
みんなを助けに行ったことは後悔してない。それは先も一緒だと思う。
そうだよな。さっきのやつあんなに必死に小さい奴らを守ろうとしてたもんな。
Yeah, in fact, she was kind of insistent on that point.
ああ、最後の最後までさっきは本当に勇敢だったと思うぞ。
ええ、私もそう思う。さきは本当にかっこよかった。ここにいるみんなをちゃんと助けられたのもさきのおかげだもんな。
At least the main reason. Yeah. Saki did everything she could for all of us, to the very end. even in her final moments. That's why
ずっと落ち込んでちゃダメだ。僕らは前に進まなきゃ。先の死を無駄にしないためにも、僕らは絶対脱出しないといけないんだ。世界を救うためにも。きっと先もそれを願ってる。
タクマの言う通りなのかもな。
ああ、そうだよ。さっきのためにも前に進まねえとな。やっぱタクマはいいこと言うぜ。葵さんもそう思うだろ。
そうしてサキさんのことを忘れるの。
Yeah, I figured she wasn't gonna take to that quite so well, but
分かってるわ。たくまくんの言ってることはきっと正しいのよね。でもサキさんはもう帰ってこない。
葵さん、
私ちょっと風に当たってくる。葵、待って。
待って、僕も行く。
I can't let her go off on her own like this.
タクマ、僕も。
どうしよう。うちひどいこと言っちゃったのかも。
ミュウは悪くない。だから
Nobody really said or did anything wrong there. It's just Aoi was so close with Saki that, you know, she definitely needs more time to, you know, deal with the grief.
それだけじゃねえだろうな。あれはもっと。いや、なんで
It's almost more like, you know, most of the group might have lost a friend, but she lost a sister type of thing.
葵さん、待って。葵さんってば。
お願い、来ないで。
でも
今は話したくないの。葵、たくまは心配して追いかけてきてくれたのよ。
みんなだってすっごく心配してるんだぞ。
私はみんなに心配してもらう資格なんてない。
葵さん、
サキさんは
Yeah, I figured she was gonna think of it that way, like it's her fault.
葵、何を言ってるのよ。
そうだよ。葵さんのせいだなんてそんなわけないじゃないか。
この世界がどれほど危険な場所なのか嫌ってほど知ってたのに、私はサキさんを一人にしたのよ。だからあんなことになったんだわ。
だけどすぐに葵さんたちだって追いかけたじゃないか。僕たちはあの時できる最大限のことをしたはずだよ。
本当に。私はサキさんが病気のことで悩んでるのを知ってた。その反面、この世界でのびのびと自由に過ごせる嬉しそうな顔もたくさん見てきたわ。この世界でなら何かできるのかもしれない。自分にできることは何でもしたいって。懸命に前を向くサキさんだからこそ、いつか無茶をするかもしれないことくらい分かってたはずなのに。
だとしたら僕のせいでもあるよ。だってあの時 サキを止められなかったのは僕も一緒なんだから。
違う。だって私は
You what?
心のどこかでサキさんを止めたくないって。だってサキさんは本当に一生懸命で優しくて眩しいくらい輝いてて。葵？
So, my hunch is that little bit of Aoi that she just said, like, didn't want to stop Saki was probably thinking of, you know, Saki's confession about her illness and being worried about it, and, like, maybe kind of in the back of her mind being like, oh, she really wants to give it her all here before, you know, we go back, and she has to deal with this sickness again and it holding her back. Something to that effect. I don't know. But anyway.
昨日だってどうして勝手なことをするのってそう思ったはずだったのに。やっぱり心のどこかでは羨ましくて。だってそんなサキさんに私は憧れてたから。私もサキさんみたいになりたいって思ってた。サキさんに認めてほしかった。そんな私の自分勝手な気持ちがサキさんを危険にさらしたの。葵、さっきから何を言ってるの？葵は何も悪くないじゃない。いいえ、私のせいよ。眷属が小さい子に化けてるって気づいていれば、私が余計なことをしなければ。そしたらきっとサキさんは死なずに済んだはずなのに。
So she blames herself even just for, like, you know, being deceived, like falling victim to a trick of the enemy. Like, from an outside perspective that seems unreasonable, but, you know, when you get kind of locked in a certain way of thinking, those are the kind of thoughts you end up with. Oh, owie. I can't believe you'd think this way. Still, her trying to take all the blame onto herself doesn't make any sense. I mean, Saki acted according to her own will. If I had to say, it might be all of our faults. All of us, Saki included. But it's not like playing the blame game will bring her back. I doubt she'd want us to be doing that in the first place. Okay, I guess I'll save real quick. Although, oof, because of the whole karma alignment and associated choices, guess I'm choosing that option.
さんの気持ちはわかるけど、思い詰めてもサキは帰ってこないよ。
じゃあサキさんを忘れろっていうの？
そうは言ってないよ。だけど
Okay. I don't know why I didn't seem to really hear him talking for any of that. Did I just miss it, or I don't know.
たくまくんの言う通り、サキさんはもう帰ってこない。
That definitely doesn't seem like the best response in the moment, but
それでも私は自分 責任がなかったとは思えないわ。絶対に。だって私はあの時私は。
葵さん、どうしてそこまで。
葵の不安なことも悩みも全部聞くわ。だから全部話してね。
僕も一緒に聞くぞ。
ごめんなさい。今は何も話したくない。葵、悪いけどしばらく一人にしてお願いだから。葵、
I couldn't comfort her or cheer her up. She's still in shock. What can I do?
タグマ、
カイト。
さすがに気になってな。お前だけに大変な役をやらせちまった。みんな何か声をかけなきゃとは思ってたんだが、俺もいろいろと考えちまってな。あいつに何て言えばいいのかわからなかった。
葵さんを追いかけるべきかな。
いや、やめておけ。本人の言う通り。
See, I would have almost thought, like, well, given the way that this world is, maybe follow at a distance just to make sure that she's, like, you know, safe. But, I don't know.
今はそっとしておくべきだ。
I definitely get why they're thinking that way, though, as well. I hope she manages to cheer up soon. Free action period, okay. Meanwhile, I've got something I need to respond to. Well, need is a strong word. Oh, geez. Okay, meanwhile, stream is dropping frames like crazy. Love that. Whoa, hello. Okay. One of the joysticks kind of got stuck there. Alright, well, you know me. Gotta check the empty rooms first. Yeah, this stuff I can totally speed through, though. Okay, nothing new there. What, the forest area. Yeah, there's a few empty spaces here. Just a few. But seemingly nothing at this one. Another item. Head to the shrine. Anything here? Seemingly another item. Oh no, it's a battle. Why didn't I see the little... Why didn't I see the little bit of like, oh, there's something here, I can feel it. Yeah, thanks for that tip. I totally didn't know. Ooh, hold up. Okay, so... Yeah, I'm pretty sure I've got Zudomon in here somewhere. I don't think I have a permanent version of Ikakumon, though. So I might want to try to recruit one of them. Which means, if I'm going to do that, I should use a couple of the partner Digimon here. Oh wait, and there's a Gomamon too. So maybe I should try and use like 3 of the partner Digimon. Because if I don't have a permanent Ikakumon, I pretty much guarantee I don't have a permanent Gomamon. Okay, so Syakomon, Dracmon, Labramon, and then we'll pop some of the wild Digimon in there just for funsies. Especially the part where they will end up leveling up like crazy after the battle. Okay, talk. Oh, that's right. Labramon can't do that. Hold up, there's an Agumon there? Okay, hold up. Let me retry. Because I feel like I definitely need to be doing this a bit different here. At least in order to be, you know... Okay, so... Syakomon. Oh yeah, there is an Agumon there, what do you know? Okay. So, 4 partner Digimon it is. And not Labramon. Which means... 1, 2, 3, 4... This is just a t-shirt. Not sure why you're calling it a jumper, but... It's funny you mention the idea of me asking to be, I'll say smitten because that's the actual proper English word. Smited is not a real word. But, yeah. Somebody in my Instagram comments is pretty much coming to the conclusion that I want to be smitten or whatever because I dare say something against the idea of, I might as well get specific with it now, against the idea of Christian nationalism. Which, if you're not familiar with the term, I'll explain, but if you are, then I'll just leave that as is. Something you'd like to say to me? Go on, don't be shy. Yeah? My language, my word. Explain more. So Christian nationalism is kind of a recent movement / push to essentially make the United States in particular a fully Christian nation where, like, all of the laws reflect specifically Christian morality and values. And honestly, the ones making the biggest push for it are some of the most intolerant Christians you'll ever meet. They essentially want to ban any and all things that are, you know, more open and accepting of different types of, you know, religions, sexualities, different things like that. Pretty much because it's like, nope, God's way is the only way. We need to make the laws God's way so then all the people will, you know, come to God and we can save their souls. But it's like, you don't save their souls by just getting them to behave a certain way, which is my point of contention. One of my many points of contention. So yeah, essentially, there's a recent push in some Christian circles for theocracy by a different name. And I'm not for it. But because it's, you know, Christian theocracy that's being pushed, my saying that I'm against it gets me labeled as hypocrite, non-believer, apostate, insert similar word here. That I'm essentially, you know, going to hell and I'm anti-Christian. I would expect a Christian nation to follow that Christian viewpoint to the letter. Tends to end up in a lot of fisticuffs in history, though. Yeah, and that, like, with how many different Christian, not even just denominations, but, like, ways of thinking about certain issues there are among Christians, even that could be a problem, to where you'd have some believers getting in trouble, essentially jailed, if this gets pushed, by other believers for thinking a certain way. Unless we could somehow all come together and agree on a mutual understanding of certain issues. But I doubt that's the case. Like, have you seen Twitter lately? Or even just my Instagram comments are evidence enough of that. Stream is having frame issues. Why is the stream having issues? I don't know. He probably mentioned something about fighting. Their bond's stronger than family. I would also enjoy arguing that a nation is the territory of an ethnic group, so multiracial Christian nation is an oxymoron to begin with. Well, that's the thing. If they got what they wanted, the people pushing Christian nationalism, that is, then it wouldn't end up being multiracial, multicultural, multi-anything. But they think that's totally fine. It's... I mean, as strong and harsh as this sounds, it's like they're pushing for a new version of the idea that resulted in the Aryan race. See, with you saying that, I kind of assume it's a bit of a joke. Please tell me if you're being serious, though. Because, like, I'm not trying to be, like, super judgmental, even of the people who are promoting this. I just want to point out how I think they're misguided. Okay, no, there are no other enemies I could attack right now, which means I won't have him attack. Who am I going to talk with? Let's talk with the Rikakumon. Better to take some sort of action than just sit idly by and worry. Really? Little column A, little column B. Things are such a mess, I want to get away from basically everything and live in a healthy society. Yeah, like, I'm not saying that things aren't bad, as they are, but, like, let's not swing the pendulum too far in the other direction that it smacks us in the face on the way back. I didn't even I didn't even see what he said there. I'm not gonna get a chance to do anything with this Ikakumon. But I would argue a big reason a lot of the problems are the way they are. Not so much from a moral standpoint, but like in other ways. You know, things like crime, homelessness, other things like that being the way that they are is more a function of the wealthiest of the wealthy people trying to turn the rest of us against each other. But I'm sure I'm stepping on some toes saying that too. We're basically living in the collapse of the British Empire. Barbarians and degenerates are looting what's left. Even in it's definitely getting there. And that's the unfortunate part of things. But, like, honestly, though, based on what I've read in the Bible, it's going to get bad for believers before it gets good. Like, I wouldn't expect any real, I don't know. I'm not saying that we shouldn't try to reach other people with the gospel or anything like that, but like, it's kind of laid out in prophecy in a way that, you know, either we're not going to be here for a bunch of bad stuff that happens, or essentially, like, you know, we should kind of expect to be on the outs of the majority of society. Really, I mean, that's kind of been the expectation all throughout New Testament and beyond. Because, you know, Jesus was persecuted, killed even. And, like, the fact that he wasn't accepted by the world definitely means we shouldn't expect to be as Christians. So, yeah, hold up. Common Christian who dips into the worst of the internet and comments on it. Often says he thinks the end times are kicking up steam. Honestly, I wouldn't doubt it. I'm not gonna say for sure that, like, I think it's happening, per se. But I honestly wouldn't doubt it. And that kind of should be the expectation, or, like, we should kind of mentally be ready for that. And if dude's legitimately looking at the worst of the internet, then, I can only imagine just the kind of filth that he's getting into. Like, there's... Not that I'm even necessarily assuming I'm aware of the worst of it, but there's some really, really just messed up situations out there. Some of which I'm only really partially aware of because of, like, Reddit and reaction videos thereof. Also, I don't really remember encountering a wild Agumon before this. I know that's totally different than the main discussion that's going on. Oh, jeez. Yeah. Okay, cool. I've got a chance at recruiting Agumon here. I definitely don't have a wild Agumon. Also, I find it interesting how, like, generally speaking, the most deplorable things... Well, maybe I shouldn't say it like that, but a lot of the really deplorable things that you hear about kind of wind up coming from the rich folks who are otherwise probably just bored and can't think of anything else to do that interests them. So I go back to my earlier point. It really kind of is like it really kind of is the super rich folks who are the worst of society in a lot of instances. Anyway, I should check out that Gomamon and see what I maybe could do with it. Oh, hold up. Is that the one that I just recruited? I guess it's gotta be. So, let me look at the evolution chain here. What all do I have temporary version, or, sorry, permanent versions of? Got a permanent Marine Angemon. I've got permanent ones of all the Megas. Can we go down the rabbit hole and ask who makes up the majority of the ultra-rich? I mean... I'm not going to be putting any particular effort into going down that rabbit hole, but I'm not going to, you know, deny discussion thereof. Do wild Agumons have different Evo paths than the normal one? I'm not sure about that, because I don't think I've even gotten a wild Agumon before. I think I've maybe gotten like a wild Greymon or something like that previously. Actually, do I even have any of the... I don't think I have any of the Agumon specific stuff in here that I've collected. Anyway, Digimon Survive got a new meaning. What do you mean, what streaming services can I stay on? Like... I'm sorry, your last comment there confused me a bit, Robot. Oh, geez. It's still not sure how to answer your question relative to that. But, yeah. The ultra rich do kind of end up having a lot to do with some of the streaming platforms. Did I finish? I did not finish EDF. It's just I don't feel like I'm at a point where I'm necessarily stuck with it. Or sorry, stuck in it, I should say. So for Saturday streams, I usually like to do a game that's different than, you know, my concentrated video game that I'm like actually recording episodes for. Unless I feel like I need to go and grind or do something else with it. Anyway, do I have... Okay, so there's some of the... Well, now I have a wild Seadramon there. Okay, so there's Mega Seadramon. So I've got that line covered. I think I have a wild Mermaimon somewhere in here. Oh, man. I've been talking too much. Okay. YouTube live stream totally, like, went screwy there. Hopefully it's actually still working. Yeah, okay. Anyway, I didn't finish EDF. I'm right where I left off Thursday's stream. I don't think they're on to me so much as it was just I had an extended period of OBS dropping frames. Although, Kick didn't really seem to suffer too much from that. So I don't know. So I've got a Seadramon. If I'm gonna evolve this Gomamon here, I really should probably evolve it into Ikakumon. Because I'm pretty sure there are other Digimon that could potentially evolve into Shellmon. So, here we go. Yeah. Now, I will admit, I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of how Kick kinda had its initial funding. But, like, I don't know. At the same time, I feel like before too long, if it isn't already that case, it's probably gonna be able to be its own entity and just have its own earnings separate from any backing from gambling sites or anything like that. Hey, another battle. Alright. I will be eating a bit in order to, you know, help my throat feel a little bit better. I already have all these Digimon. But what levels are they? 35. Yeah. Maybe don't use my lower leveled wild Digimon. So, I'll tell you what. In order to try and get... 2, 3, 4, 5... In order to get a full party's worth of, like, really up high-level Digimon, but also work on some of the lower-leveled ones, I'm going to include the top 4 through 6 of my wild Digimon, and then have 3 of the lowest levels. Okay. And you know what? That gives me a perfect opportunity to just auto-battle this and, take a little... I don't want to say a break, but have a little snack in the meantime. Alrighty. I'll remove the webcam for that so you don't have to, like, see me eating. I try to be courteous about these things as I am able. So, I'm just now realizing, Robot, I don't think I've bothered to ask you what your religious background is. Of course, I guess I should also say, like, if you don't care to share your religious background, that's fine. I just thought I would ask, in case you're open to mentioning that. I mean, the stuff you said before would kind of lead me to think that you're Christian, but I also don't like making too many assumptions. Alright, now that I've checked all the empty areas... yeah, I really don't know what's up with my stream having such issues today. It has not been like this in quite a while. Maybe, I don't know. Sometimes my computer does a weird thing where, like, my computer and only my computer will have issues with keeping Wi-Fi signal. I literally don't care about affinities in this playthrough, so I'm going to talk to as many of the Digimon as I can first. I'm supposed to be Aoi's partner, but I couldn't do anything. Am I that useless to her? How can I make her smile again? Labramon seems really upset about Aoi. Wish I could do something to help her at a time like this. If it were me, seeing Agumon acting cheerful as always would put me at ease. But maybe having someone staying quietly by her side is just what Aoi needs. General troublemaker. Wish I had more faith, but I'm not inclined that way. Line mostly with traditional Christian philosophy. I find it fascinating to understand why weird seeming rules make sense in context. So, I mean, the big question, of course, as to whether or not you're Christian is more so, you know, faith in Jesus, but I'm not gonna push real hard on that if you'd rather not talk about it, but I would say that it's more than just knowledge of, you know, the commands within the Bible that makes one a Christian. But I do also appreciate the willingness to look into it and see reasoning behind it, even if you don't totally fall in line with that. What am I gonna say to Labramon here? I don't know how to say this, but maybe there's no need for words here. I think Aoi's having trouble putting her feelings in order. It's only natural after everything that happened yesterday. Getting stuck in your own head at times like this brings nothing but bad thoughts. I think you should be there for her, watch over her so she doesn't spiral into somewhere worse. Really? That increases affinity with Aoi. Huh. Will she accept me? If she rejects me again, I don't know what I'll do. We'll figure it out together, if it comes to that. It's times like this that we have to stick together and do what we can. Yeah, you're right. Thanks, Takuma. I won't hold back when it comes to Aoi. I'm her partner, after all. I'll head to Aoi's side. Yeah, so... Also, Robot, I'll say this. I have a coworker who I've talked with a few times about, I guess, theology, for lack of a better way of putting it. Or at least, like, the Bible and what it says. And he... I won't say he's, like, staunchly atheist, but he has outright said that, you know, he's... that he thinks all the world's religions are just kind of not entirely made up, but they all like stretch the truth. And it's in those things where they stretch the truth that they like kind of become unreliable / like not worthy of being followed, if that makes any sense. He's very skeptical of like mass manipulation in that kind of way. But like he also definitely looks into these religions, seemingly the Bible in particular, and trying to learn what all it says, like the ideas behind it, even if he doesn't necessarily believe it. And I can definitely respect people that take that kind of stance as opposed to just being like, yeah, well, it's all dumb. Not that I'm going for affinities, but just to see where they're at. Because that'll affect the order in which I talk with people. Honestly, they're all pretty close together. I guess Minoru's is the lowest out of everybody I can talk with. And also, Robot, not that I'm saying this is equivalent, but like, you talk about wishing you had more faith. I mean, there are times when I wish I had more faith. There are times when I wish I, you know, prayed more, leaned on God more, you know, trusted that, you know, things will all work out more instead of getting frustrated over current situations and things like that. But you're maybe meaning something a little bit different than what I'm describing for myself. Anyway, why is he just staring out the window like that? Get the impression I should leave him be. What's the matter, Minoru? You were playing happily with the little ones a moment ago. Huh? Oh, nah, I just don't get it, man. After all that went down in the park, we're just palling around here? Or is it palling around here? I don't know. I can't tell if I'm spent or if my head just hasn't caught up to the present. If I try to think about the future, it's like my gears won't even turn. I see. Our circumstances have indeed been confusing as of late. Even so, I see no value in forcing either agitation or ease into your thoughts. We must take things one step at a time, starting from the task in front of us. Huh. You think that's good enough? Don't take my word for it. Takuma? Agumon? Huh? Whoa, you guys were there the whole time? Don't be shy, jump on in here. You sure? Your input would be much appreciated, you two. Well, let's see now. I mean, Falcomon's basically right. Nothing will come of forcing things and messing up. But we ought to look ahead while we handle the things we have to do now. What's the best thing to do when you're out of ideas? The kids come first, of course. Okay, this is not a karma-related choice. So, yeah. I'll go with what Falcomon said. Falcomon's right. Let's take things step by step, then think from there. Doing what we're supposed to will make the next task at hand easier to see. I think so too. One task down means one step forward. Yeah, thinking positively like that is better than sitting here worrying my ass off. Thanks, you two. I feel better somehow. Yeah. Also, to any who are, you know, not okay with certain language, I apologize a bit, but just the way I engage with this, I end up just reading off even some of the bad words anyway. Yeah. Paddling around. I guess he was trying to say we're all just, like, hanging out when he said palling around like that. That's the only way it makes much sense to me. Anyway, Miu's looking after the little ones. Maybe I should say something to support her. Anything else that I can... Oh. Hidden thingy. What is it? Clean dressing. Okay. The rest of this is all stuff I've examined previously. Ooh, let me talk with Agumon, though. Wonder if Kick 8... if it was some message in between... general troublemaker and palling, then yeah, I guess Kick 8 your message somehow, because I don't see any others between those. Wouldn't identify as a Christian, think the Bible is part folklore, part truth. But which is which? I'm not sure, okay. Believe the world is bigger and more complex than we can understand. There's too much weird stuff in the world, and we know Jesus did exist and the Great Flood did happen, but what caused it, I don't know. Yeah, so that's one of the reasons why I definitely do not consider myself a biblical literalist for all of it. Like, there are things where I think it's more helpful to be open to the idea that, okay, maybe this isn't meant to be taken 100% literally. Like, I mean, there's some of the more obvious things like, you know, the poetry works, the, why am I blanking on the term right now? But, you know, the stories that Jesus gives as examples of the kingdom of heaven and different things like that. I mean, those are the obvious ones, but I think there are also other things that it's like, maybe this is worded in the way that it is more so for like a moral lesson. Like Red Riding Hood isn't supposed to be taken literally, but its value as a lesson is still worth sharing. Yeah, kind of that idea. Like, I think, for example, the story of Jonah in the Bible could easily be one of those kinds of things. The point being that no matter how much we try to resist God, ultimately God's will prevail. For example, saying you shouldn't eat pork in the Bible has been found to be because in that era there were parasites in pork and it caused a health risk. Yeah, there's a surprising amount of practicality in a lot of those commands, some of which we're not even aware of if we don't really look into the times that it was being said. And what I meant by part true, part folklore. Folklore isn't a bad thing, it's wisdom passing down in digestible ways. Yeah. So I'm more of like a big picture reader and thinker on the Bible. And while I do also find it interesting sometimes to look at the details and consider, okay, how can this make sense within the bigger picture, still, I don't let the details distract me from the bigger picture and, like, possibly confuse that in any way. And of course, being a Christian, the bigger picture, in my opinion, is always Jesus. Anyway, back to the game, I guess, for a sec. Talking about, there's something I've been meaning to ask you for a while. What would you say is the most important thing to you? Agumon has a serious look on his face. What's he trying to get at? Lots of things are important to me. Friends, peace, life. The most important thing is... Oh, that's going to be a karma alignment thing. Alright. I've already made the branching wrathful path thing, so as long as I don't go too far off on any of the others, it's not like I'm going to then affect Agumon's evolution chain. So... I feel like it would be a very Takuma thing to say that his friends are the most important thing. What made you ask in the first place? Well, the thing you want to protect most is the thing I want to protect most, too. Very Agumon-like. Just wanted to check what that was, is all. Forgot to give this to you. Vexing Alacrity Crystal. One of those many, holdable items that I, like, barely use in this game. Especially at this point, because they're really not needed. Oh yeah, this scene. I've definitely had this scene in other playthroughs. Surprisingly good with those kids, Mew. Takuma, where'd you come from? Feel kind of embarrassed, didn't think anyone was watching. Taking care of the kitties so well is admirable, if anything. You think? Just find it's good to have something to do. Like a big sister. Think she's been doing a great job. Never thought of her like that. She did get them all together at the castle. Maybe she's got a serious side. I kind of want to say complete softy just because I don't think I've given that answer in previous playthroughs. I think I went with the big sister type before, and that was the actual good affinity choice. Maybe because you're a total softy. A total what? Huh? Well, I mean, you're usually so kind to the people in your life. Looking after people, helping where you can. It's a softy if I've ever seen one. You might be right, but there must be a less awkward way to describe it. But hey, that's how an older sister would act in the first place, right, Takuma? You know what, you're right, Syakumon. You make a good big sister, Mew. Oh, okay. Meh. Think I'm doing a good job. Glad to hear it. Let's see here. Despite my lack of faith, I think a nation needs a common ideology to hold it together and a way to stay in contact with each other. A non-corrupted Christianity is a solid foundation for that. Yeah, like... I guess if you boil it down to the basics, I would be in favor of a Christian, a Christian nation in the sense that, like, it leans on Christian ideas, and, like, when push comes to shove, that's what prevails in, you know, politics and laws and things like that. I just don't want that to be so... I don't want it to go so far that it's to the detriment of people who believe other things. I don't want to push others away. I just would want, you know, the Christian kind of worldview to be the basis of how we conduct our lives. And I don't think it necessarily requires saying that, like, oh, gay marriage can't be a thing, or certain issues like that. Like, I think we could still allow some things like that in order to not, like, completely push away other people who don't believe in God. Neighbors have a reason to see each other every week and share in something, and the less mentally capable have proper guidance in how to live a good life. Yeah, more so, like, Christianity at its core of, like, helping each other and, you know, focused on that as opposed to the more legalistic way that a lot of people pushing for Christian nationalism are thinking about it. Stuff targeting. So, when I say that, I'm saying, okay, like, maybe you could allow some things, like maybe gay marriage, for example, or again, that was more so just an example, but, like, there are some things that maybe you could allow that, as long as they aren't, like, doing things connected with that to the detriment of others. Like, the mentions of, I don't know, transgender story time, or however that's, whatever that's technically called, those kinds of things. Like, I don't think we should be promoting these kinds of ideas, especially to children, but also, like, making allowance for people to live certain ways for themselves, and also not be, like, punished outright for it. If they're the only ones really being affected by it, then that's where I'm saying maybe leave a little tolerance. Marriage is encouraging families, children in the future. A nation cannot survive if it allows a rival ideology to compete with that foundation. I see what you're getting at least to some effect. And yeah, because, like, then any children that they would adopt and or raise would also be brought up with the same ideology, which, come to think of it, this kind of situation is why God in the Old Testament was so adamant about laying out these laws that said, nope, don't allow these things, because they're going to, you know, ultimately corrupt my people on a broader scale. So yeah, I'm not really sure how to reconcile the idea of, you know, wanting to be based on a Christian sense of morality, at least as the center point, without necessarily, like, just banning, pushing away, and just pretty much outright criminalizing every other way of thinking, every other religion, and that kind of stuff. So, like, because if we push away any other religions from within the country, then I don't know. I feel like there's a possible diminishing of the Christian witness, even just to that extent, because then, you know, even more so than current day, we just come across as intolerant. If you give tax cuts to families to help them have more kids and support theirs, then give it to stealing taxes meant for growth, life, and I mean, yeah, I honestly have been trying not to think too hard about, like, you know, financial end of things and tax cuts, because, I mean, first and foremost thing I would do if trying to make a actual legitimately Christian society would be getting rid of all kinds of tax cuts and such that the hyper wealthy end up taking advantage of. Or maybe loopholes is the better term there. But, like, they're the ones doing tons and tons of actual, like, damage, not just, like, psychologically, but physically and financially to the rest of the country. Or even the rest of the world. Remind you of the Muslim conquests of Christian Europe. Hey, but then, okay, we think about all that, and was Jesus then being weak in the face of a conqueror when he allowed himself to die on the cross? Like, Jesus, as he lived on earth, was, you know, at least the way that he lived was far less aggressive, far less judgmental than most Jews at the time thought that he would be. And that's part of the reason that they thought he was blaspheming by calling himself the Son of God. Because they were expecting a king, a conqueror, like they had heard about in the old prophets. But the fact that he came in and wasn't like that, at least physically, calls into question, in my mind, how much we really should, you know, try and conquer, so to speak, for ourselves. Yes, he took a whip to the bankers, so it's not like he was completely devoid of... But that was also, like, because it was directly a corruption of the church, of his father's house. It wasn't necessarily, you know, just because they were doing some general thing that wasn't really having much of an effect on other people. Like, you use the bankers as an example, But again, like, there was a specific reason for that, and that was the only time that he took a whip to anybody. The only time that is really demonstrated in the Bible that Jesus had any sort of anger. And so if in every other context, when he was faced with prostitutes, with tax collectors who cheated people out of money, with all sorts of other sinners, and yet he chose to build relationships with them instead of judging them, then why do we think, or why do some of us think in this day and age that being judgmental and pushing other people away is the way to go? We're supposed to come alongside them, build relationships with them, and show them how God cares about them, even in their sin. But if we push them away by making laws certain ways, then we can't build that relationship with them. Yes, I know there are like missions and things like that that could be done, but at the same time, that's why I say if we go too far in pushing Christian morality in the country, then we very likely diminish our witness by appearing intolerant. So, again, I ask, if Jesus is our example, and he had very few cases of being judgmental, other than to the people inside the church who were messing it up, then why should we think that being judgmental to those outside the church is the way to go in this day and age? It's not consistent with the actual biblical narrative, and especially not the narrative of Jesus and what he did. Anyway, sorry, I haven't exactly gotten to some of your comments there because I was on that train of thought. Even if you ignore taxes, the family unit is the foundation of everything. Yeah, and that's why I mentioned the whole thing about God not allowing stuff among his people in the Old Testament. Depends how you view corruption. I view the modern world as a corruption. Is it wrong to want to take the whip to it? Yeah, but again, it was more so corruption of God's house, of the, really it's even more so corruption of the church now, you might say, that Jesus was judgmental of. You let demons corrupt people because you must be tolerant and non-judgmental. I'm not saying that at all, that we should let demons corrupt people, but if they truly are demons corrupting these people, then we need to come alongside them and do what we can to cast out those demons. Just forcing laws to be a certain way isn't going to cast out those demons. I mean, shoot. Let's use classic Republican ideology here, because they're mostly the ones pushing for Christian nationalism right now. Criminals are not going to hold to the law anyway. That's their excuse that they use for not pushing gun reform. That's their excuse that they use for not pushing tax reform. Although, in some ways they're trying to do that now, but it's totally bonkers. But my point is, like, if you want to use the kind of ideology that says, well, you know, the criminals are just going to ignore the law anyway, and honestly, some people are just going to ignore the laws anyway, and what's going to end up happening to them? They'll get locked up in jail. Maybe we could try and reach them with a prison ministry then. But otherwise, like, you're just making it so that other people are getting fewer and fewer chances of being witnessed to. If we force behavior on them and make them hide how they truly think and feel, then we're diminishing our chances to witness because they're not being forthcoming. We're not allowing them space to be open and build that relationship that really is one of the primary ways, I'd say the primary way, to actually bring people to Jesus. But anyway, is jail a solution anyway? Can end their lives and save a lot of money. Money could go towards families, more children, less So you're saying death penalty instead of jail? Is that what you're suggesting there, Robot? Because solves the problem of them not falling in line with Christian standards. Guess what? Even if we make an entire nation that follows Christian standards, we've got the entire rest of the world that doesn't. So, like, just being intolerant of people acting other ways isn't the way to go. Because if we would then view the rest of the world from the lens of intolerance, our focus is not going to be on mission work. Our focus is not going to be on, trying to redeem them. Our focus is going to be, they're bad, let's conquer them and get rid of the bad stuff. Criminality is partly genetic. There's a bit of an argument for that, but I'd say it's upbringing even more so than genetics. Because, yeah, sure, African Americans might be more inclined toward, committing crime. I'm just saying that as a hypothetical example that I think might kind of hit a bit on the reality. But a lot of the ones that are so criminal, it's because they're in certain situations that increase their desire and or need for those, well, need, air quote, but like they're put in a context where that increases the criminality, whether it's, growing up in slums or, being just the product of a family that is already involved in crime. So, like, saying it's genetic is kind of debatable, but it tends to follow through in families because of the influence of the rest of the family. Okay, with conquering people who... Like, yeah, I agree with wanting to get rid of certain things, like child slavery and, like, sex trafficking and that kind of stuff. I agree. Bad. Sure, let's do what we can to get rid of it, or at least, like, diminish it as much as possible. But, like, there's kind of always going to be some semblance of those things, at least until Jesus returns and all that kind of stuff happens. But, I think in terms of actually, like, spreading the gospel, though, it's... In terms of spreading the gospel, doing it by force is not the best way. Like, we've seen throughout history the different theocracies that have prevailed for a time, and they all get struck down. They all end up being misguided in some way. They all commit horrible atrocities of their own because they get corrupted. So, which is really the worst evil? Letting other people do their thing and having evil happen that way, or conquering other people, but then having our own corruption from within cause us to be the source of that evil. Genetic markers such as impulse control. Yeah, I mean, okay, yes, there is some of that, but like, saying removing bad genetics, that starts to sound eerily like Nazi Germany, Aryan culture kind of stuff, and no, like, there are things, I mean, I guess you're more so getting rid of the criminals is what you're trying to say, rather than just a specific people group. At least I hope that's what you're saying, but like, you know, watch how you say it. Can't fix the world, you can make it better. Yeah, but which way are we trying to make it better is the question. Are we trying to make it, you know, just more behaviorally better? Or are we trying to make it better in that, you know, we're actually giving people the ability to accept God or not? It's the British Empire and later the U.S. offshoot rule the world and do anything they want due to force. Might ultimately makes right, and if you're not mighty, you will be conquered. And that's more so from a governmental and military sort of standpoint. Like, I'm definitely all for Christians being involved in politics and, you know, standing up for our rights being protected. Might ultimately does not actually make right, though. Might just wins out in the end, physically. Like, did the might of the Persian Empire, when it conquered Israel, did that make the Persian Empire right? No. So, might makes right is actually a false idea. Because what's right is ultimately what God says is right or wrong. But I assume you're trying to say in that, you know, adding more might behind the Christian idea would then bring other people to righteousness, which just brings me back to the whole concept of, like, yeah, but sin avoidance or, like, good deeds is not ultimately, like, according to the Bible, you can do all sorts of quote-unquote good things, but if you don't believe in God, it doesn't save your soul. So, is it really ultimately good and or making things right if we just eliminate all these poor unfortunate souls who don't happen to agree with us? By killing people who disagree, especially on things that, I mean, just in general, by killing people who disagree with the Christian sense of morality and with, you know, God being almighty, with Jesus being our savior and whatnot, just killing them outright means we're actually sending more souls to hell. What's right is ultimately what people with power enforce. No, what is then told in future generations as the right way is what people with power enforce. So, being mighty does not make what you do right from the Christian perspective. And I know you said you're not completely in line with that, which is probably part of the reason we're having this debate, but from, like, this is why I have a problem with the Christian nationalism push, is because from a Christian perspective, might doesn't make right. Laws don't save souls. Man. So, yeah, for example, of World War II, how many people know the books burned were about... Saying book burning is bad. I mean... My problem in the World War II comparison was more so just, like, assuming that, yeah, one particular race of people is ultimately superior. And, like, I get wanting to diminish the power and influence of, you know, just sinful, destructive ways. But, again, lest we push the pendulum too far, I feel like there are some allowances that need to be made. Like, okay, would we, for example, allow alcohol if we were to become a Christian nation? Like, the Bible just says don't get drunk. It doesn't say don't drink at all. So, where do we draw the line there? How many souls do you save by showing you're mighty and what you believe is supported by your deity, making you strong? So, by that, you're saying that, you know, that display of power could ultimately lead people to think, oh man, these people are able to conquer so many lands, they have such power, they must have some strong deity behind them that allows them to do these things, because it's otherwise unbelievable. I mean, there could be some of that, but then, if that's the case, like, are they coming to God sort of for the wrong reason, so to speak? Like, I don't know. It's exactly how Christianity was seen in many countries. But the question is, how many of those people truly put their faith and trust in God as opposed to just hopping along the bandwagon, so to speak, and joining the winning team? Because, again, it's not sheer power and force that makes a people righteous in God's eyes. Now, would that then possibly open a door to leading those people to God and actually, like, you know, teaching them God's ways. Yes. But, like, does the good and bad of that method really outweigh the good and bad of the current situation? See, because with the current situation, like, we might see more sin and evil spreading throughout the world, but at the same time, that gives us more of a chance to witness to people and say, hey, you see all these ways that the world is going crazy and doing things wrong? It's because they've moved away from God. And so, you know, if we had, like, if you would just believe that, how can you judge anyone's faith? You said don't be judgmental, right? They have their relationship with God in their own way. So what I'm saying is, instead of, so according to the Bible, the way that it's laid out in the New Testament is that the only way to be saved from sin and death figuratively, but to be saved from sin, is to put your trust in Jesus, in the work that he did of dying on the cross, rising from the dead, and all that kind of stuff. So when I talk about, you know, are these people really coming to faith, or are they just hopping on the bandwagon? Are they just joining a people group and following their laws, but not really actually relying on Jesus as their savior? Or like I don't know. That's the thing. Without knowing somebody, I can't necessarily accurately judge one's faith. Like, there are all sorts of different ways that people could come to faith as well, I'll admit that. But there are also plenty of things that look like faith that aren't actually faith. The way is narrow, or the gate is narrow that leads to life. So, yeah, like, again, the big question that I've been batting around in my head throughout this whole discussion is whether or not the good and bad of doing things one way really outweigh the good and bad of doing things a different way. And in the particular discussion of Christian nationalism, is that really a better set of good and bad on the whole relative to saving souls and bringing people to faith in Jesus than what we currently have? Because the part of the motivation for this push of Christian nationalism is that we're, quote-unquote, saving the soul of the country. But is that really what we're doing by just pushing laws? I'm not saying that either way is necessarily better than the other through my own knowledge, but, like, I think there has to be something better than really both options. The core issue, so to speak, is that I find tolerance to be weakness exploited until it destroys the host. And, okay. But I'm not sure I would agree with tolerance being weakness. Can it be exploited? Yes. If we allow it to be. But there are ways to not allow tolerance to be exploited. Like, if you make laws that specifically say, hey, don't allow children to get gender transitions, then yeah, that's like a way to diminish the exploitation of tolerating people with different gender ideologies. So that's why I say I think there's got to be some sort of better middle ground in all of this. Intolerance may lead to defilement of some, but it also leads to more chances at redemption for others. So, again, good and bad. And as far as some issues go, like, if more of the early church thought the way that you're presenting your train of thought right now, every believer would still have to be circumcised. Every believer would still not be able to eat food from pigs. But they allowed those things so that the new believers would have a better time at being introduced to the faith and actually being able to focus on the core of the message of the gospel, which is Jesus. So, today, gay marriage started when homosexuals started to plant car bombs until their demands for it to be delisted as a mental illness were met. What do you do when your tolerance leads to terror? So, the thing is, at that point, it was the intolerance that actually led to the terrorism. Because they planted car bombs due to other people's intolerance and their desire to speak so adamantly against it. Bad example, Robot, if I do say so myself. Like, I'm not saying there's nothing bad that has happened from, homosexuality being accepted. What of religions who run over Christmas markets and bomb music events? That's causing harm to other people. Don't allow that. That's what I'm saying. If it causes direct harm to other people, don't allow it, or at least diminish the possibility of it. But like, so the part of the solution to that would be, okay, don't allow bombs at music events. They're already not allowed. So, okay, legally, there's nothing more we can do in that scenario. Right? Aside from, like, banning the materials that could be used to make said bombs, there's really nothing more that we could do there. And in terms of running over Christmas markets or whatever, I assume you say run over with a vehicle. Okay, do we ban all vehicles? Like, again, at what point does the trade-off become not worth it? You allow it because of the slippery slope. If you tolerate rival ideologies, they will harm you. Like, I'm still not entirely sure I agree with letting them sleep within your walls allows them to do those things. Not tolerating them stops them having access to your people. But what about... You're like going around in circles with your reasoning here. You haven't actually brought up anything new lately, to be honest. But if you tolerate rival ideologies, they will harm you. Yeah, but like, there's some harm that's going to come no matter what. And that's my point. Like, so promoting Christian ideology and saying that that is the preferred stance on things would still kind of more gently than purely through law say that, hey, here's what's best for everybody. Here's what we think / maybe even you could argue no is best for everybody. So here's how, we expect things to go. But again, with like there's only so far you can go with legal measures in order to stop certain things before it's like you've made your own dystopian society that is basically not allowed to do hardly anything. Gonna die someday. Should I shoot myself now since it will happen either way? No. I never said anything like that. Or should I try to live a good life avoiding my own death and try my best to avoid injuring myself? Yes, but you're using a line of thought that doesn't quite completely translate to the current situation that we're discussing. 'Cause, like, yeah, you should try to avoid death, but if you're sitting there cooped up in your own bedroom by force of your parents, for example, because they say anything to do with the outside world will corrupt you, like, how much of a life is that really worth living at that point? So, like, there's got to be some sort of middle ground trade-off that could happen where it's like, okay, yeah, certain ways of thinking, like, I certainly don't think we should just up and make a law that says, okay, well, guess what? Nobody's allowed to be gay anymore. Nobody's allowed to be any religion but Christian anymore. Like, that would be completely harmful, because then it's pushing people away, and it's just trying to force behavior and not, like, I'm thinking of the ultimate eternal good here, not just the good here on Earth and in this life. If I let bad people into my society, they will do bad things. Bad things will happen either way. But that doesn't mean bad people aren't making things worse. So why tolerate them knowing they will make things worse? There's always going to be bad people, and I'm not saying that we should just be okay with that and let it happen. However, like, if we make an entirely Christian nation, for example, there are still going to be bad people. So what do we do about those bad people then? Like, everybody sins. All fall short of God's glorious standard. Does that mean that they are all immediately worthy of death? Debatably, you could say theologically, yes, they are. They're dead in their sins. But does that mean that we should not give them a chance at redemption? And that's where I would say that the Bible argues no. They should get a chance at redemption. Just like Jesus gave chances at redemption to prostitutes and tax collectors and all those other sinners with whom he interacted. There are people doing that exact thing against Christians, and they're winning. They've outlawed basic Christian beliefs in many countries with hate speech laws. Tolerance led to being cooped by Satan. Many of those countries were never majority Christian to begin with. If you're talking about places like China, the Middle East, other than maybe Israel, but even that, it's more so Jewish than Christian. Like, you mean... And that's, okay, so those kinds of situations are why I say we should still have Christians in politics standing up for our rights. But that doesn't mean that protecting our rights means we necessarily have to eliminate the rights of so many others. A lot of core Christian nations now have laws and jail time against opposing homosexuality. Because in those situations, it's deemed that the idea of intolerance is like a hate crime, bigotry, whatever kind of thing, I think is what you're saying there. And yeah, again, like, by all means, let's stand up for our own rights, but that doesn't necessarily mean we have to outright demolish everyone else's. Yes, there's going to be tension there. Yes, there are going to be people who, you know, come in and corrupt the nation, the church, whatever. But I feel like just trying to legalize all of that away isn't ultimately going to work either. So if legalizing it all the way isn't going to work, then why should we promote a push for that method? Because ultimately, if we have a quote-unquote Christian nation where all the laws line up with the Christian worldview, you could have somebody who merely follows those laws but still not believe, end up coming in and through pride or greed or whatever, end up corrupting people that way. Is Christianity being replaced because it... Look, the Bible says that we, as Christians, won't be accepted by the world. The world rejected Jesus, so it's going to reject us. Like, that shouldn't surprise us. And just because we know that's going to happen, that doesn't mean that we should try and, like, bulldoze our way through everybody else. Ultimately, it's all probably going to get worse for the church before Jesus returns and all the stuff in Revelation happens, and then it's all better for all of eternity. Like, should we just accept ourselves being bulldozed just like I said we shouldn't do to other people? No. Let's stand up for ourselves. But, like, there's a difference between allowing things and being corrupted by them. at least on a global or even national scale. Because, again, like, you could say that, okay, people are allowed to, you know, like, you could have gay marriage, you could have people say that they're transgender, whatever, but, like, you can't allow gender transitions for children, and you can't allow, you know, transgender story time, or whatever the heck that's called. Like, anyway, the Bible said people would reject you, so you sacrifice the biggest empires in human history and let them get turned into tools of Satan, mutilating children. There's more to it than that. You're oversimplifying the issue. Okay, so let's take let's take the Holy Roman Empire, for example. Its downfall may have been related to tolerance, but it did entirely worse things than tolerance while it was still called the Holy Roman Empire. Why? Because corrupt people got in there, used power that they shouldn't really have had access to say, hey, let's kill a bunch of these, you know, unbelieving people over here in Israel and try to reclaim the promised land. As if that's not an equivalent atrocity to people being confused about their gender, to people, like, being murdered by other religions. Like, slippery slope will always push worse and worse, and we should expect it to. But, like, again, like, I'm of the idea that us forcing our way, our rules upon other people, like, that doesn't by default save their souls. And if we commit all sorts of atrocities along the way just to supposedly get rid of other crime, of other sins, how does that make us any better? If we have the equivalent of a new age of holy wars to get rid of Islam, to get rid of, you know, whatever is going on in China that says Christians can't meet and believe what they believe, if we kill all these people that don't believe in God, automatically damning their souls to hell, how is that any better in the big picture of eternity? Your thoughts are focused on this life from what it looks like and just making things better here on Earth. I'm focused on eternity and bringing more people to that. Did not know that was where the term gender came from. In fact, I would have assumed gender came more so from, you know, say, things in other languages where they have, like, male or female pronouns for objects. That may very well have happened well before your story of the pedophile. So, I'm not totally sure that's the truth. And the fact that I use the word gender, the fact that I'm using common language, I mean, we collectively as a society may have strayed, but is that really that big of an example of it? Like, gender is the reason you have difference in Spanish between something being called, you know, el whatever and la whatever. You can lead more people to eternity when you control the propaganda than you can when the propaganda is turned against you. I would argue maybe not. You see, the places where the church has actually grown the most and flourished the most and actually looked most like the church as it's supposed to be is when it's been under the most dire circumstances. Think about the early church in the New Testament being persecuted by the Jewish officials of the day, if not also by the Roman Empire. And yet, they had days like we read about in Acts where there were people being saved by the thousands in one day, in one location. So, assuming that we have less of a chance to witness because the world turns against us and wants to, you know, tamper down our influence, that's not necessarily true that we are less able to lead people to eternity that way. Anyway, if you had the Hollywood machine, you could have billions watching your message instead of Marvel movies. Yeah, but is that the legal route? No, it's not. So, if you think that's a good way of influencing people, and that's totally not a legalistic way of doing it, then why should we take the legalistic approach? This discussion has gone on quite a while. I appreciate it. Don't get me wrong. But, I may, for the sake of my own sleep, need to wrap this up soon. Pretty sure I saved recently, but whatever, just in case. So, long story short, there are other debatably far better ways of reaching people with the gospel and encouraging them to have faith in Jesus than just trying to make other beliefs illegal. Letting your enemies oppose you, saving souls, leads to less souls saved. Again, I go back to the whole New Testament church. They were persecuted by multiple groups of people. And yet, what did they do? They took whatever they could within their circumstances. They still witnessed to people, even though they said they weren't allowed. They still did it because, you know, if you truly believe that it's right, you're not going to let the law stop you. So, I'm not sure that it does lead to less souls being saved. I certainly don't think it leads to less souls being saved than when you forcefully kill a bunch of people who disagree with you and never give them the chance. Thought I'd try and get through at least one more scene in this game before I wrap things up.
別に追ってきたわけじゃねえよ。単なる偶然だ。俺も一人になりたかったからな。
カイトくんも。
先のこと、お前が何を一番後悔してて、何が一番許せねえのか。俺、わかる気がすんだよ。
Don't need to ban what people won't be exposed to anyway, but you would have to ban it before eliminating it to the point of people not being exposed to it. And again, like, there are people who are gonna break the law anyway, so I don't see the push of taking a legalistic approach to trying to convert the nations as the way to go about it. Jesus told us to preach, to go tell others about what he did, not to go take control of them and force them to live under certain laws. Yeah, but like that whole not having the internet exist, like there's plenty of other things where that doesn't exactly translate. Like you can't just not have weapons exist. You can't just not have, you know, certain... Well, I mean, you could potentially not have certain substances exist. But, like, some people are unfit to be free. They only respect might, and anything less will simply fail. Much of the Middle East works that way. If every man is armed, every man has to be polite, for anger could lead to weapons being drawn. Oh, so you're saying we should just allow guns because, you know, that won't at all lead to any murders or anything like that. That's logically inconsistent with what you've been saying. If the point of making sin illegal is to get rid of it, then why would you say that guns should be legal, as if that's going to get rid of gun violence or anything like that? Murder's already happened, so we should tolerate everyone having a gun. This is... No, that's not... I mean... Okay. Yeah, murders do already happen, but, like, do I think we should try to diminish the impact / the possibility of that? Yes. So like I said, there are ways that you could, okay, like in that context, you can have stricter gun control laws. There might still be murders by knife or by other weapons, but they would often end up being less deadly. In kind of similarly, it's like, okay, yeah, you can be strict on certain things without completely banning them. Also don't think everyone should have guns. Also don't think laws should apply evenly to everyone. Some people should be treated better than others. An outsider shouldn't have the same rights as a citizen. There's some merit to that, yes. Even within the Bible, there's some merit to that. But, like, saying certain laws apply... saying certain laws apply outright to everybody just because you want to get rid of the people who don't deserve the freedoms, does that mean you should completely get rid of that freedom? Like, that's what your line of argument has been saying thus far. Let's completely get rid of the freedom so that the people who take advantage of that freedom can't do the bad things that they do. So rather than having a more detailed approach and saying, okay, certain people, like, you know, in the gun control context, wait, what's my line of argument on gun control too, though? Like, because I'm not saying that we should just completely let it be free. I'm also not saying that the best approach is to completely get rid of guns in that line of thinking. Similarly, would they though, or would the bad people prosper? And that's getting into what you were talking about with, if we allow this stuff, then the bad people are going to, you know, take advantage of the situation. And yeah, I see your perspective there, but also, like, I'm sorry that, like, I can't necessarily be specific because, like, it would probably be different with different types of laws, but, like, banning certain things outright, I don't think is necessarily the way to go. But, like, okay, banning murder outright, yeah, sure. But, like, my point is that in order to not just be so forceful with, you know, living a Christian life and following that to the detriment of anyone else who would think any other way, then, okay, let's make for maybe some different levels of allowance, so to speak. I don't know, it, like, this is the problem. It's a complicated issue. And with these, like, just absolute either-or lines of thinking, we don't really end up getting any progress because we're so stuck on who's right and who's wrong and not trying to actually come to a more reasonable conclusion that is somewhere between where both extremes are arguing. I'm looking at ideology memes in a Darwinian sense. Either you survive and thrive, or a predator takes your place. You have to defend yourself and what you hold dear to prevent that. Yeah, I mean, how right was Darwin really, though?
霧に飲まれる瞬間。
And again, you talk about defending yourself. That's why I say let's have people in the government to defend our rights, but not necessarily get so pushy as to, you know, cancel out everyone else's.
やめて、言わないで。カイド君に言われなくても分かってるわ。サキさんの手を離した私がいけなかったの。だからサキさんは死んでしまったのよ。
違う、そうじゃねえ。
何が違うのよ。
あいつはさきは
Yeah, and as far as
自分から
meme culture, that honestly hasn't helped with most modern day debates either, because it has tried to turn more complicated issues into just like oversimplified meme type ideas that actually don't reflect the truth. Right will never protect you from a murderer or a rapist, or memes with no real world purpose or existence. See, the way I think of rights, that's the type of thing that I believe the government should protect. Like, you go back to the Constitution and the, or maybe it's the Bill of Rights, I don't know, whatever. But talking about everyone having certain unalienable rights, or is it inalienable? I don't know. Anyway, certain rights, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Those are the types of things that the government is supposed to protect. I would argue life being primary among those, liberty being secondary, and the pursuit of happiness being tertiary. So, if one's pursuit of happiness infringes on another person's liberty, then don't allow that pursuit of happiness. If one person's pursuit of liberty diminishes someone else's life and infringes on that, then that pursuit of liberty shouldn't be allowed. Those rights are protected through force. Without force, they're no more than an idea. But, like, there are, like, not necessarily every, you know, not necessarily every liberty comes at the cost of someone's life. At least not directly. There are a lot of these ideologies and things that drive people to do certain things that is really more so just the person themselves, perhaps, you know, twisting, warping, or otherwise trying to use that reasoning as an excuse for their misguided actions. And that happens with literally any ideology under the sun. So, like, no matter what framework you come up with, how many people believe in rights could you have believe in Jesus if you had control of it? So when I say, then, that let's have a nation, perhaps, where Christianity is the core of it, like, you can actually have that be taught in schools. You can have Christianity be intentionally promoted without necessarily saying that, all right, you because you disagree with it, can no longer exist in our society. That's more so a difference of, like, trying to make other ideologies illegal versus, you know, having Christianity at the core of things. Anyway. And so to answer your question, I do believe there's potential for more people to believe in Jesus if it was, you know, promoted within schools and within the government and things like that. But that's promoting Christianity not necessarily being the same as, you know, making other religions and ideologies illegal.
あれは先の決断だったんだ。
嘘よ、だってサキさんはもっと生きたかったはずだもの。ありえない。だって誰より生きたがっていたはずだもの。なのに私が手を離したのは私が先なの。自分がどんな目にあったとしてもサキさんの手を離しちゃいけなかったのに。
Hey, you know what? If Christianity becomes illegal, so be it. It's illegal in China. It's illegal in many other parts of the world. And yet it still spreads. Look, it's not up to me or you to, you know, determine necessarily how many people are led to Jesus or the ways that they're led to Jesus. Ultimately, no matter what we do or don't do, there's the potential for God to use that for his purposes. So, like, when our best example did not lead by means of power, I don't think it makes any sense for a Christian then to lead by means of power. Because why would you do that when your example didn't?
そうじゃねえ。ちゃんと思い出せ。さっきはお前を守ったんだ。その事実を受け止めてやれよ。
それは生き残った方の都合のいい解釈よ。
じゃあ逆の立場だったら、お前が先の立場だったらどうしてた？お前だって先と同じように自分で手を離したかもしれねえだろう。
だからサキさんの死を当たり前に受け入れろとでも言うの？そんなの無理、絶対に無理よ。
んなことくらい分かってんだよ。俺だってもしミュウが同じ目にあったりしたら
Yeah. Jesus did not play Digimon Survive. Because it wasn't available at the time he lived on Earth. I do honestly think I might wrap up the stream once this scene is over, though.
でも何をしてでもお前を守りたかったサキの気持ちもわかんだよ。俺がもしサキと同じ目にあってミュウを
There's
巻き込むかもしれねえってなったら
that's the thing. It's like we can't necessarily 100% know for sure what Jesus would or would not have used, but you know, we do the best we can with the knowledge we have and the example that he gave us, which was definitely not one of violence. Like, just because he drove the bankers out of the temple doesn't mean that he actually necessarily, like, hurt any of them. Definitely doesn't say he killed any of them. Anyway.
絶対にミュウを突き飛ばしてでも自分が死ぬことになっても
Actually, if we could just drop tiny little tactical bombs on, you know, like, the... Lips really hurt. Yeah. That they do. But it doesn't even necessarily say that he actually hit any of the bankers, just that he drove them out using a whip. Anyway.
たとえミュウを泣かせちまうことになってもミュウに恨まれてもそうしちまう
And Kaito would do a fine job protecting you. No matter what happened, no matter what it cost him, he would save her.
私は何もできなかった。何もできなかったの。
I think that's the point Kaito's trying to make. You couldn't do anything more than that.
俺だって何もできなかった自分がけどそれでも俺たちは生き残ったんだ。だから生き抜かなきゃいけねえんだよ。葵、ようやく見つけたわ。ってカイトも一緒だったの？どうしてサキさんだけ
Willing to comprehend. We nuke all the bankers. You can wait. I mean, I personally am not inclined to wear a dress and call myself any other name, but hey, you know what? Maybe that would make the world a better place, because then, like, the total hoarded wealth of the billionaires would, you know, spread throughout the rest of the people. Anyway, yeah. For real, though, appreciate the chat, Robot. I don't plan on nuking anybody or wearing any dresses, but, you know, I guess you do you as long as it's not, like, too bad. Anyway. Okay. I'm really not in the mood to listen to the extended crying.
すまねえ。俺がますます追い詰めちまったみてえだ。
Only took 2 hours to get through 5 dialogue. Yeah, really. Hey, you know what? I played the game in case there's no other discussion going on. Really, I want this tie-in to be about being open for discussion. But it would be, like, even worse if I just sat here and was like, alright, so anybody have anything to say? So I'm wondering at what point in this particular part of the story we'll actually get to the divergent evolution. Yeah, that... And... Alright, I guess I played right into your hands in a way. But hey, you know what? I would hope at least I gave you a little fun with all that. And I guess you at least got to know a little more of my thought process on some things. Alright. Well, like I said, I think I'm going to wrap up the stream with that scene being over. There's definitely going to have to be more of this part in a future live stream. But anyway. Alright. Yeah, thanks for watching and engaging in the chat there, robot. I respect you. I respect the robot. Yes, I said that specifically because of your username. Anyway, yeah. Hope everybody enjoyed it. Either way, I'll be back here next week. Also on Thursdays. But yeah, I hope you're all doing well. Hopefully I'll see you soon for something or another in the near future. Hopefully we can, you know, dialogue some more, enjoy some more video games at some point. Maybe actually getting more video games in future streams. But anyway, whatever the case is, till next time, stay cool, everybody.